In an industry often defined by contracts, choreography, and cold business decisions, there exists one relationship that continues to defy those norms: the bond between BTS's Jin Seokjin and HYB founder Bang Si-hyuk. And no, it's not just business. According to insiders and longtime staff members, it may be something much deeper: a genuine father-son dynamic forged over a decade of mutual trust, emotional honesty, and quiet loyalty. When Jin first joined Big Hit Entertainment in 2010, he was unlike any other trainee. He had no formal dance or singing experience. What he had was a face that made people look twice and a personality that made them stay. While most would write off a recruit like that, Bang Si-hyuk, then still deeply involved in all trainee evaluations, saw something others didn't. He wasn't loud. He wasn't the most confident. But there was a warmth in him. Bang Si-hyuk once said in an old interview, now resurfacing online, he made people feel safe. That single sentiment would go on to define the next 13 years of their relationship. In those early days, Bang Si-hyuk reportedly took a special interest in Jin's development. Where others saw a visual member who might not keep up, Bang saw potential, not just in Jin's looks or humor, but in his quiet persistence. Vocal lessons, acting feedback, mental support. Jin wasn't just trained, he was nurtured. Bang PD-nim always talked to Jin privately, said one former vocal trainer who worked with BTS in 2012. He'd check on his emotional well-being more than anyone else. It felt more parental than professional. That relationship didn't fade as BTS rose to stardom. In fact, it deepened. Sources close to HYB confirmed that Bang Si-hyuk was one of the first people Jin spoke to before announcing his enlistment in late 2022. They had dinner together, just the two of them, one staffer revealed. No cameras, no staff. It was a goodbye, but also a thank you. When Jin returned for his solo tour kickoff in July 2025 with a record-breaking concert at the Honda Center in Anaheim, fans noticed something telling. A bouquet of white orchids sat backstage with a handwritten card simply signed, "For my proudest student, SH." It's no secret that Bang Si-hyuk has always had a soft spot for BTS. But with Jin, it feels personal. The eldest young who quietly carried the weight of leadership when things were tough. The member who never sought attention, but earned devotion. The one who, despite every doubt and delay, became a soloist worthy of filling stadiums and hearts. "He reminds me of myself sometimes," Bang once confessed. But he's better. He leads with kindness. And in a world where idols are often reduced to image and perfection, Bang Si-hyuk saw in Jin something truly rare, a man who never needed to be the loudest to be the most powerful presence in a room. The industry may call him worldwide handsome, but to Bang Si-hyuk, he'll always be something far more meaningful: the son he never had and the artist he always believed in. It was a quiet winter evening in Seoul, just weeks before Jin Seokjin was scheduled to report for mandatory military service. The world knew it was coming. Armies braced themselves. BTS members tried to stay strong in the public eye. But away from the cameras and the headlines, a private dinner was taking place. One that, to those who witnessed it, felt like the quiet closing of a life chapter. According to sources within HYB, Jin personally reached out to Bang Si-hyuk and asked for a one-on-one meeting before his enlistment. There was no fanfare, no private chef, no boardroom. Instead, they met at a simple Korean restaurant tucked away in Sancheongdong, the kind of place where nobody brings a bodyguard, just memories. He requested a room at the back, a restaurant employee later shared. It was just the two of them. You could tell it wasn't a business dinner. It felt like a father seeing his son off before a long journey. What they spoke about remains private, as it should be. But one moment has quietly made its way through staff circles and online fan forums. After the final course was cleared, Bang Si-hyuk reportedly reached into his coat and handed Jin a letter. It wasn't typed. It wasn't in an envelope. It was handwritten, folded neatly, and sealed with a single paperclip. And no one knows exactly what it said, but those who saw Jin after the dinner said his eyes were red. Not from exhaustion, not from stress, but from the kind of goodbye that hits deeper than expected. Jin didn't say much when he left that night, said a longtime manager. But he held the letter like it was something sacred. And maybe it was, because for all their years together, through training, world tours, Grammy nominations, and solo stages, that dinner marked the first time they faced a future apart. No music schedules.
No comeback meetings.
Just two men who started with a simple handshake and ended with a silent promise. We'll meet again. Fans often talk about Jin's emotional control, how he keeps it together when others cry, how he makes jokes to shield his feelings. But those closest to him say this was different. That letter broke him. One staff member whispered, but in the best way. Days later, Jin would enter the military quietly, with no fanfare. And Si-hyuk would return to his work, restructuring HYB, preparing for the next chapter. But something shifted that night. A line had been drawn, not between idol and producer, but between what was and what will never quite be the same again. Yet even in that farewell, there was love, because what Si-hyuk gave Jin that night wasn't just a goodbye. It was acknowledgement. It was pride. It was the unspoken truth that no matter how big HYB grows or how global BTS becomes, Jin will always be the heart that started it all. And for Si-hyuk, the man who built an empire, that's a legacy more valuable than any stock price. For someone who's never been big on dramatics, Jin has a quiet way of making every little thing feel cinematic. He didn't post a photo of the letter. He didn't talk about it during live streams. He didn't even tell the other BTS members what was inside. But somewhere between his enlistment day and that Anaheim stage, something in Jin changed. And fans are convinced it all started with that letter from Si-hyuk. Multiple staff members who worked with Jin during his final weeks as a civilian noted the same thing. He was unusually introspective. Calmer. Softer even. He would just stare at the floor for a few seconds sometimes, like he was processing something really deep, one makeup artist said. Then he'd smile and say, "I'm okay." But his eyes looked like they'd been somewhere else. Where exactly? That's the mystery. While no one has seen the full contents of Si-hyuk's handwritten letter, small details have begun to surface through whispers. And if those fragments are true, then it wasn't just a farewell letter. It was a time capsule of a relationship 13 years in the making. According to a close HYB executive who wished to remain anonymous, the letter began with a single line, "You were never just the visual, Seokjin." That alone is enough to bring most armies to tears. Because for years, Jin was the one member most misunderstood, typecast as the pretty face, dismissed by the media, even by some early fans who couldn't see past his symmetry. But Si-hyuk always knew better. He saw the courage behind the humor, the grit behind the grace, the man behind the member. The letter reportedly goes on to detail Bang's first memory of Jin auditioning, not as a singer, but as an acting student walking down the street near Konkuk University. "You didn't know we were watching you that day," he wrote. "But even then, you had a presence. Not loud, but magnetic. Like someone born to lead without needing to command." Some parts of the letter, sources say, were too personal even for staff to quote. Mentions of Jin's late grandfather. Notes on his self-doubt during the Wings era. Reflections on the way Jin never once let the team see him break, even when carrying silent burdens, and finally, the closing line that has since become legend in HYB's internal circles. When they write the story of BTS, I hope they realize the quietest one often carried the heaviest weight. It's said that Jin folded the letter back into its original creases and kept it with him during his first month of military service. Not to show anyone, not to gain sympathy, but because some words aren't meant to be shared, only felt. And when he walked onto that Anaheim stage in July 2025, older, stronger, and more self-assured than ever, fans noticed. His voice, more grounded. His presence, like a storm had passed and left peace in its place. His words, raw, but radiant, and Owen saw the letter in his pocket that night. But everyone felt what it had done, because Jin didn't need to show it. He became it, the acknowledgement, the trust, the love. Every line Si-hyuk wrote now lives in how Jin stands taller, speaks softer, and sings like someone who finally believes what we've known all along. He was never just the visual, he is the vision.